2018-2019 school calendar. Let the record show that all members are present for the hearing. The Council Bluffs Community School District is holding a public hearing on revisions to the calendar. After Dr. Vorthman speaks on the proposal, people from the audience will have the chance to participate. Dr. Vorthman.
Thank you. We presented some information last month, or last board meeting, it was 2 weeks ago, regarding recommendations to the calendar. And just to recap a couple of the items from that presentation, we asked parents and staff in a survey to look at the 18-19 calendar and provide us some feedback around 5 key items: winter break, spring break, snow makeup days, graduation, and academic calendar. That survey had over 1,800 participants. About 51% were parents, 36 staff, and 11% identified as both staff and parents. As a result of that survey, where there was consensus reached, we are recommending to reduce 2 days at winter break, move the end of the second trimester 2 days earlier into the tri, and then move the last day of school to May 31st. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments about the revisions to the 2018-2019 school calendar? If so, please step forward, state your name and your address, and you would have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your participation during this public hearing. I'm now closing the public hearing session. I'm calling to order the regular business meeting of January 23rd, 2018 for the Council Bluffs Community Schools. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Dr. Ogres.
Present.
Mr. Minshaw.
Present.
Mr. Grove.
Here.
Mr. Kazire.
Present.
Mr. LaFurla.
Present.
Mr. McGlade.
Present.
And Mr. Arthur.
Present. Please join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Now I need approval of our agenda. Is there a motion?
Move approval of our agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jill. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And the agenda is approved. Now I need approval of our minutes for the workshop meeting of January 9th. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move approval of the workshop meeting minutes of January 9th.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion on the minutes? Any changes? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The minutes are carried. Now we come to the public participation portion of our regular meeting. If there's anyone who would like to address the board, please feel free to do so. Step up to the mic, state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes to address the board. They're a quiet group tonight, so we will move on. Thank you. Superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. Arthur. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Ostrowski to the mic to present our student and staff recognition of the month.
You bet. Students are first in this district, so let's start with our student recognition, shall we? I'd like to invite Dr. Murillo to join me at the podium to recognize Cameron Baker. Cameron, would you join us up here, please, so we can recognize you. Okay, this is the second year we've invited Cameron here as the City Player of the Year for football, and we're getting a chance now here after the season's over to recognize and celebrate that, as well as the fact that he was all-state football for the Iowa Newspaper Association, and probably lots of other accolades, including viral video star. If you didn't catch that, you can see how many tackles did you break, Mr. Baker? 7. Okay, he knew it, seven tackles. So he is receiving our Student Star Award for his accomplishments and his outstanding abilities, and I think Dr. Murillo is asking him who's here with him tonight to celebrate. So would you please stand? Cameron's parents and brother are here tonight to help celebrate. We'll wait, we'll do it in a little bit. All right, we're going to take some photo bombing here in a little bit. Congratulations, Cameron. We have outstanding staff, as you know, but each month we take the opportunity to recognize through nomination process our support staff member and a licensed staff member of the month. This month, we get a twofer. We're taking care of December's honorees as well as January's. So I'd like to start by inviting Bianca Lopez to join Dr. Murillo up here in the front of the room. Bianca? Just stand there and be uncomfortable while we talk about you. Okay, here is what Bianca's nominators shared about her. Despite being a first-year para, Bianca has stepped in with enthusiasm and a passion for reaching students academically and personally. She brings a calm, friendly demeanor to the classroom every day and supports students with her gentle but firm approach. She is reflective and strives to learn something every day so she can support students effectively. Her pleasant, enthusiastic demeanor contributes to her ability to engage students and makes her a great team member to peers. Furthermore, they said on a daily basis, Ms. Bianca pushes students to the ELP classroom, in the ELP classroom to reach a level of independence. She often will spend her own money on items to motivate students to meet their IEP goals. Ms. Bianca spends time out of the school finding creative ideas to keep the students motivated. And the nominator said, I asked one of our ELP students how they feel about Ms. Bianca. Quote, she makes our day bright because if we don't understand something, she will explain it and make us feel special. Ms. Bianca displays a high level of professionalism with coworkers on a daily basis and also pushes them to do the same. Ms. Bianca is a huge asset to the ELP classroom at Hoover Elementary School. Congratulations, Bianca. And Dr. Murillo is presenting to her our Employee of the Month trophy and a gift card to the 712 restaurant, and both are funded by our partner, the Community Education Foundation. Yes. And Bianca brought with her a whole row and a half to help her celebrate. So thank you all for being here, and Dr. Murillo would like to greet you, including Hoover Principal Brittany Hetrick and Hoover Sam Lynette Peterson. Okay, our December licensed staff member of the month is Maureen Belling. Maureen Belling, come on forward. She is the nurse at... She was nominated by her peers at Carter Lake Elementary, but she also serves Wilson, Franklin, and Roosevelt. Is that correct? So that's a lot. But she is able to be the supervising nurse to our health associates who serve those buildings on a daily basis. So she's the professional resource and trainer, and then those others deliver the services so she can be at her home building. And this is what Maureen's nominators shared about her. I'm pleased to share a little information about Maureen Belling, school nurse. Maureen is one of the hardest working people I know. Each year, she makes sure she's organized to meet the needs of students and meet all of the necessary requirements. For example, one of her talents is being able to hunt down immunization records from all over the United States. Maureen is very committed to her job, and it shows. Her knowledge about her students is just great, and she often knows their family trees. Quite literally, 2 generations of families have experienced her engaging, thoughtful, caring manner. Maureen is also one of the most caring people I know, said the nominator. The compassion that I see her give our students is amazing. She will also give the coat off her back to a person in need. Indeed, I have seen this happen. Maureen Belling exhibits all of the living the mission characteristics and more. Congratulations, Maureen. Yes, we're glad to celebrate. There's, yep, Principal Doreen and Secretary Taya. Please.
I just would like to acknowledge my colleagues at Carter Lake, the staff, especially the teachers, and our SAM and principal. I feel very honored to be acknowledged for this, but really I share this honor with them. So thank you so much.
And our January honorees, one of them is not here tonight, so we're going to honor her later, and that is Holly Reeves from Rue. Yeah, so we're going to hold off and celebrate her a little bit later in the month, so next month. All right, so our support staff member of the month for January is Alex Reed from Thomas Jefferson High School. Alex, would you join us? Yeah. Alex is a grad coach, and he is also in his first year. So we are hiring really outstanding folks to serve our students, and Alex is a great example. So I'll share a little bit about what the nominators provided. Alex has helped the culture and climate of Thomas Jefferson High School in the short time he has been here. He works with struggling students and is constantly building relationships with them while still making them accountable for their classes. He has helped with athletics and football and in the weight room. His office area, get this, is often full during the day as he works with students. Are you a magnet? Okay. Alex has great integrity and passes that gift to his students. We're so proud to have him as the Thomas Jefferson employee and the district's January support staff member of the month. And I know Alex's principal, Todd Barnett, is here, and his mother, who's a teacher here in the district, also is here to support him. So, all right. Mr. Arthur, would you like to join in the pictures? We'll take a quick few moments and get some good photos of our stars.
I think it's great. I'm not knocking it. It's just interesting that.
We have one more special note to make about one of our colleagues, and want to say something, although he reluctantly shared information with me. Mr. David Fringer, our Chief Technology Officer, has been named one of only 28 nationwide to the Next Generation Leaders Program for those who are dedicated to technology and education. And we're going to be pushing out something. I would like to encourage everyone to vote, because it's one of those things similar to what we did for Coach August Mans, where then 5 finalists are picked out of those 28 to receive an award and recognition at the national conference. So we are excited to have him, and I think it reflects well on the quality of our leadership and our dedication to kids and enhancing their learning through technology.
Diane, will you be able to put that on our website or somewhere so that?
I am going to push it out all over the place.
Okay.
Sly, yeah. Oh, probably we can work around that with our.
And that concludes our report. Thank you, Mr. Arthur.
That was quick. Okay, now we move on to the resolution portion of the meeting. First up is approval of a revised 2018-2019 school calendar. Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Directors approve the calendar for the 2018-19 school year.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion on the calendar?
Just help me remember, in lieu of, we've just missed some snow days, are they spelled out in this new calendar?
Yeah, there's 4,
Yes.
and then one at the end.
They're marked also like they were in the previous one.
Okay.
Where they're set up as a vacation, but if we have snow days, the teachers know those are makeup days. Yes,
And I
So it's
believe
within
they,
the school year, not at the end of the year.
that's correct.
they come at the end of February, which could still be snowy, but, yeah.
Yes. We're going to go ahead and make up 2 already, pushing out. Current year.
We missed 3 already?
Yeah, we missed 3, we're going to do 2, I'm afraid we're going to do more. So possibly
Any other
have to do one.
questions on the calendar from the board? Kyle? No? Okay. Mr. Wilson?
So I open up online voting, but I'll call your
Oh.
names.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes. And the revised calendar is passed. Now we have approval of contract for grant writing services. Is there a motion?
Move approval for contract for grant writing services with, is it ASL? ASL, grant writing services in the amount of $28,488.
Thank you, Jill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kyle. Any discussion on this contract? Okay. We'll move to a vote unless Bill has a question. Okay. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes. And the contract is approved. Now we have approval of job descriptions, including Director of Special Education, Coordinator of Early College Academy, Coordinator of Career and Technical Education, Coordinator of Special Education Programming and Achievement, and Coordinator of Special Education Monitoring and Compliance. Is there a motion?
I will move approval of the job descriptions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion or questions on these? Seeing none, Dean?
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes. And the job descriptions are approved. Now we have approval of Northwest Evaluation Association MAP map assessment. Is there a motion?
I move that the board enter into a 3-year contract with Northwest Evaluation Association for the MAP test.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? I guess I have just general questions about it, but is there any sort of presentation to go along with this portion, or?
Dr. Worthman, if you'll join me. Dr. Worthman did a presentation on the NWEA, and I believe it was in December that we would be bringing it forward. We did not have a presentation for tonight, but
Okay.
you certainly can answer all of the questions you might have about it.
Obviously, you feel like this is a good assessment for us?
Yeah, so just a little bit about the process that we used. We first asked other UEN colleagues what assessments they were using for interim assessments that show both proficiency, outright proficiency, and growth over time. We took that list, we narrowed it down to 2 that were the most commonly used. One was the NWA map assessment, the other is a product called iReady. We brought both of those organizations in with a group of teachers from grades K through 12 who scored each one of the assessments based on a set of criteria that we developed beforehand. And the NWA map assessment was by far the overwhelming favorite of that group.
Great.
I also should make sure that the board knows that I used NWEA in Kansas City, and I found it to be very valuable in helping us progress monitor the growth or no growth. This is an assessment that we can use throughout the year so that we have some benchmark and some data that shows we can look at this as a district level, building level, or by grade level, all the way down to classroom. And it does give the teachers a lot of good feedback. And then we are able to respond if we see a classroom or grade level not moving versus waiting till the end of the year assessment and then figuring it out for next year. So currently, what I'm a little concerned about that I've spoke before is I don't really have a way to tell you exactly where we are. Once we get an assessment in like NWA, we will be able to tell you the growth and the proficiency and the, it even gives us a Lexile score. And so how our students are moving on the continuum.
So this will be an additional assessment that's administered at what points?
So this will be administered at 3 points during the school year and will take the place of our current district assessments. So we won't be adding additional assessments, we'll be repurposing the current district assessments. This interim assessment will take its place.
Is there, so this works out, looks like about $10 a kid per calendar year?
I
Something
believe
to
that's
that
close. I
exists,
think it was
or
a little bit
12,
more, little bit more than that,
13,
12,
yeah.
yeah.
What are we currently spending on that? Do we have that number? I'm just curious.
Our district assessments are currently developed in-house.
I mean, there's some cost, I'm guessing.
There's development cost that we pay teachers to come in, additional time that we pay for them. We also have an online assessment system, which we will continue to maintain, that buildings can use to take the previous district assessment items into an item bank and use for grade level formative assessments in their classrooms if they choose to use them.
Okay, so this is kind of a new investment to ensure that we are progressing our students appropriately.
It will help us bring the board more regular, detailed data about the progress that we're making toward meeting the goals in the academic plan.
Okay.
It looks like it's not going to start till 19 school year? Is that-
So it's going to start in the 18-19 school year. We are doing some piloting right now. If you approve this contract tonight, our plan is to start with a pilot group of teachers who we've already started to build some background knowledge with, who will kind of use to help us be early implementers, that will work on administering the assessment so we can learn from them the month of February. And then everybody will take the first benchmark in May so that we can start the year with some goal setting and use the data for our school improvement process. Yeah, they're all online. Mhm. Yep, and they're computer adapted so that as the students either get questions correct or incorrect, it moves up and down to reduce the standard error of measure. And that's one of the things that we liked about the NWA MAP assessment is it really reduced the amount of variance that we see in students' test scores that is the product of basically noise or where we can't tell how a student is doing because of the right or wrong answers that they do. They have a algorithm that allows us to minimize that greatly at the NWA MAP assessment.
I feel like this is something we've been trying to get in place for a long time. Kind of this, what the knowledge we hope this will give us.
I guess one question I have is this something that families and students can actually track for themselves as well? Would they have any ability to see where they
Question.
are, their different benchmarks, or any of this and see for themselves? Or is this just teachers and
That's it.
administration that can do?
There's a whole smorgasbord of reporting that goes along with this. Reports that both give the teacher data about the instructional points where students need additional support, as well as reports that go home to parents and families that help show where their students are along a continuum of grade level objectives, as well as how they scored based on their peer group and the national norm group.
Parents like the reports.
Do we have early implementers in every building, or will, okay, so this, they'll be able to move that out in each of their buildings then?
Dr. Shudak has put together a group of about 50 early implementers who represent every school building and every grade level.
Okay.
One sitting behind me.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the board? No? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. Minshall,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes,
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes. And the motion is carried. Now we have a motion for 2017-2018 attendance-centered course enrollments. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approve the attendance center course enrollment data for 2017, 2018.
Thank you, Jill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions or discussion on this? Should we are saying we reviewed the data? Okay,
one comment or two.
yeah.
As I looked over that, it looks to me like our enrollments for class size are pretty favorable. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I'm all for that, that's great. But is this one area we're gonna have to look at to solve the budget problems?
It is an area that we are going to look at, not for the 18-19 school year, but it could be something that we have to look at for the 19-20. But it is something that Ms. Smith, Dr. Worthman, and I have had a lot of conversations around. One of the things that I did in Kansas City was I sent out our master schedules and had somebody really look at those to see if we are as efficient in setting up and the course offerings, and then also to look at ensuring that if students lose interest in certain courses, that we don't just keep offering them because we've always offered them, but we look to make sure that we are aligning our courses to the interest of the students and, the careers that they're pursuing. So it is something that's on our radar screen.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So I inadvertently opened up another
Saw that.
one here, so I closed it and reopened up here, so y'all should have it on your screen to vote. Are you ready then, Troy, for the vote?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Mine's not on my screen.
It's not on?
Unless
We can just do a voice vote if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do a voice vote and just put it in. Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Minshall,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes,
Mr. Arthur.
Yes. Now we have a request that Dean wants us to do for the SBRC spending authority approval for, some additional special education positions. Is there a motion?
Move approval of a spending authority request from the SBRC in the amount of $407,525 for special education oversight positions and 2 PMIC positions in the 18-19 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. So I'm just curious on this one, why what's the difference between what's on the public content portion of the agenda at 594,000 and the SBRC agenda?
This is the final number here, the
Is
594.
it-
I'm not,
Was a,
yeah, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
But this is the final number here.
yeah,
Public content,
yeah,
the district will position.
Yeah, I don't know how that number got on there.
okay. So 407,525
407,525 is the number.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this with the board? All right, Dean?
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes, and the request to request additional funds from SBRC is approved. Now we have approval of new administrative regulation 102.8, new online content accessibility and functionality. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the adoption of the Administrative Regulation 102.8, new online content accessibility and functionality.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? I noticed that there was no legal reference on the bottom of this, and I thought that was strange.
I'll have Mr.
I
Ostrowski explain
didn't pay
that.
attention to it before.
This was a recommended policy by the folks who we entered into the voluntary resolution agreement for our accessibility on our website. That's the Office of Civil Rights, as you recall. And so what I'll do is check to see if there's a legal reference that would help us, help guide us if we needed to look at that in the future. And that's what those legal references help us do. So good point. I will see what that might be, and we'll put it on there for future reference.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? No. Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Dr. Ogres,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes. And the new regulation is approved. Now we have approval of architect fees for middle school plans. Is there a motion?
Move that the board approve BVH Architects' proposed fees for planning and preliminary work associated with the renovation of Kern and Wilson Middle School.
Thank you, Jill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Minshaw. Any discussion?
Yes. Is this the first time we've had something like this done? I thought a couple of years ago, we had somebody come in there and recommend a bunch of stuff. That's what we've been
Yeah,
doing,
we
kind of
had-
piecemeal.
Yeah, we had some improvements done when we did the joining room piece at Wilson, and then we did the renovation of some of the rooms at Kern. Yeah. And I think this was to try to give us some sort of a master,
So what we
Like a
did
master
before was
plan.
kind of our own assessment of what was needed.
correct,
Okay.
correct. And that was, I think, trying to correct some dire needs at that time.
So if I might, the facility audit, Stacy's providing them with a lot of our documents. And they're going through everything and talking, because we want to make sure that if we are going to renovate them, that we also do the HVAC. We make sure we have a good roof, all of those type of things. And then the ed specs, those are Dr. Vorthman, Ms. Smith. They are working with the firm to really look at how many classrooms do we need, what sizes, special education, the whole thing. And this is some kind of a master plan that we can then in turn use. We did not have one for the secondary schools. So this is our first one for secondary schools. And then the master planning, is to take all that information and to begin to develop the designs, which we will bring back to you for approval before anything is moved forward. But that allows us to complete kind of those three areas with the architects to ensure that we have a really good plan in place.
And I guess my question would be if for some reason we didn't get a approval of a
1 cent.
1 cent penny with the legislature, what would this look like then in the interim?
Mr. Wilson, you've kind of figured the numbers for us.
Yeah, so if this does not go, if the penny does not go through, we would have access to roughly $20 million. That band note that we took out gets paid off in July, and so that plus the cash flow that we have, we could probably bond out to 2029 for roughly $20 million of cash out.
Okay.
We'd have to probably do a scale-back project, but we'd have access to $20 million.
And so, Mr. Wilson and I had talked about, getting out and doing this, but even with us moving forward now to start working on these phases, we still wouldn't see the projects begin for another year almost. So this is so that we don't delay for 2 more years before we really start. But I think it's really good because we won't hit go button on exactly everything until we know how the voting goes in Des Moines.
This may be a little off topic, but with the recent events in the schools and the news the last week, are we focusing more, now that we have an opportunity to renovate the buildings, to focus on school safety in regards to, I'll be interested to see what the ideas are surrounding that, because I think, unfortunately, with mental health, we're really headed in that direction, and if we have an opportunity to make sure it's an important part of the plan starting now instead of going backwards. I just want to put that out there.
And another great thing, Stacy is visiting some districts right now.
Good.
Looking at renovations and how they have taken their older buildings and taken them up to the 21st century. So I'm
Good.
really excited that she's with BBH.
Good.
Okay.
Will the middle years program, the IB program, impact our the design process for the 2 schools, or is that?
I'm a little concerned about designing our buildings around a program.
Right.
But because if the IB went away, I didn't want to be, but we are very conscious about needing common spaces for them to be able to collaborate and to do their projects and everything. So every building will have those common spaces. Every building kind of wanted pods. Pods would be very expensive to have I think Kern has 9 teams. Am I close to being right? And if we reconstructed Kern into 9 different pods, it would cost a lot. But we are still going to ensure that Kern has the ability to have their 4 cores together and to have common spaces. We just can't redesign it into pods.
Gotcha.
But they wanted it, Dave. They were asking for it.
It's good to know what they want.
Yeah, they do.
Any further questions or discussion on this? Okay. Mr. Wilson?
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw?
Yes.
Mr. McGlade?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes.
And Mr. Arthur.
Yes, and approval is passed to hire BVH for the middle school plans. Now we come to the consent agenda portion of the meeting. There are several items in here. The Avenue J right-of-way designation to the city, special education contracts for Mason City Schools, personal agenda, and then claims and accounts, and a really nice write-up in there on the financials, which I liked.
Good.
So,
Thank you.
is there a motion?
Move approval of our consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Ogres. And is there any discussion? Okay, Dean?
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Dr. Ogres?
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes.
Mr. McGlade?
Yes.
And Mr. Arthur.
Yes, and the consent agenda is passed. Now I need a resolution to go into closed session. Is there a motion?
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Council Bluffs Community School District hold a closed session as provided in Section 21.5, Parent 1, Parent J of the Open Meetings Law be conducted to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate. but only when premature disclosure would be reasonably expected to increase the price the board would have to pay for the property or reduce the price the board would receive for the property.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Is this a roll vote or just a
Voice.
voice vote? All right, any discussion, questions? Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
That's a voice vote.
Oh,
We'll call it
yeah,
out.
brain not working, yeah. All in
Okay.
favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. And we'll go into closed session.